All right, everybody, welcome back. We're on week 5, chapter 4. We're going to talk for about some if statements, conditional operations, loops. There's some math stuff and lots of other things. So make sure you read the chapter. It's got a good bit of information in there this week. Read the chapter, watch the Cengage video, and you only got 3 assignments this week: self-test, programming, and the quiz. On your self-test exercises, make sure you pay good attention and you understand the nots, the ands, and the ors, so that you can properly predict the outcome in this box. A lot of people get these wrong, so just pay extra attention. With that, we will jump into the lesson. All right, so here I've got a simple HTML page. You can see the code. There's my wrapper, and there's 2 divs. One with one named if, has this input type number, and that's this number input here. You can select a number this way or just type in a number. Its ID is num, and then there's a button that'll run the check function, and in the other bottom there's another button that'll run the count function. So what we want to do is an if statement. The first thing we have to do is get this variable so we can perform our conditional execution. So we need a variable. Why am I not typing? Variable n is going to be equal to get element. The value is going to be equal to the value of the document element with the ID of num. So this number element. Oh, I was typing in there. So we'll get this number. It'll reach out, grab this number, and store it in the variable n. So n will equal 5. And let's say we want to do something. An if statement is like this: if and parentheses. Your conditions or arguments will go within the if statement. So if n is greater than 5, we want to do something. And after your parentheses, you have your squiggly brackets. And here, get element by ID, and we'll do this if. We're going to grab the if div, and we're going to write inside, we're going to write some HTML code inside there, and we're going to add to it. If you just put equals, it'll overwrite everything in there. So we could do that and just do equals, do a little break in here, give it some space, and 5. The number's greater than 5. All right, we save this. We refresh this, and then we check. N is greater than 5. Oh, it is 5. So it's not going to include 5, right? It needs to be greater than 5, or it won't do anything. So it does nothing. 4, I check, it does nothing. But if I put in 6 and check it, it'll do numbers greater than 5. Now you see what happened here is that it erased my button. It erased the input and erased the button. Now the only thing in that HTML of the if div is the text that I told it to do. So we want to put the plus equals here, which is kind of like an append. It will add it to the HTML that's already there. So let's save this again, refresh, bring our little thing back. We're going to do 4, does nothing, 5, does nothing, 6, check, the number's greater than 5. And now I check 7, it adds another one on the bottom instead of overriding. So that's why we do plus equals. And this is an if statement. Super simple, right? These are commonly referred to as if-else statements because we don't ever want to have that where it's like a 4 and you're clicking a button and nothing happens, right? Everybody's just like, oh, it's broke. So what we want to do on here is add an else. your squiggly brackets, and it's going to do something else if it is, so if n is greater, it can only be less than, right? So if it's less than, we want it to do something else. The number is less. Save this, save, refresh, check 6 is greater than 5, we check 4, it's less than 5, 3, less than 5, 7, greater than 5. So there it is, conditional operator, if-else statement, super awesome. Now let's say we want the we don't want the user to enter anything below 0 or over 10. So we're going to have to do kind of a nested if statement. Up here a little bit. So if n is less than or equal to 10, well, if it's n is greater than or equal to 10, I get mine all mixed up all the time. So if n is less than or greater than 10, or less than or equal to 10, or n is less than or equal to 0, we want to do something. And we'll send them an alert and just say, please enter a, okay, this is going to work. We got to do 2 ifs. We got to do a nested if statement. So if the number is greater than or equal to 10, or it is less than 0, less than or equal to 0, we're going to do something. But we also have to differentiate, because we want to do something different if it's 10 and something else if it's 0. So we have to put another if statement in here. So depending on which condition it matches, if n is less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to 10, that's when we send an alert. And then we say, please enter a number less than 10. And otherwise, else number greater than 0. And then we have another nested if. So we have this if statement here. We have this if else, it's complete. This if else is also complete. We have this just if sitting out here. It needs an else. So we'll do else. And we are going to put this if statement inside that else. So if it's greater than or equal to 10, if it's out of range, you're going to get one of these alerts. If the number is 1 or 1 through 10, it's going to do what it's supposed to do, greater than 5 or less than 5. So let's see what happens. If I save all this, refresh the page. All right, we'll do 4 is less than, 6 greater than, 11, get a message. It says, please enter a number less than 10. And that's all it does. And if we do 0, please enter a number greater than 0. So here you have 2 nested if statements inside this giant if statement. And you can see we're using the or operator here. So that's it. That is if else, conditional operations. Pretty simple. Let's move on to loops. A loop is generally used to count stuff. If you remember, if those of you that were in my Python class remember that we do like a for loop for this many items in a list, do this, and then for every item in that list, it will do it. Same thing here. let's say we want to count. Let's first give it a variable. Now this could be a user input or whatever, but I'm just going to make a variable. I'm going to name it S and make it a list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's got 10 items in it. And I'm going to put the output in that count, remember the for div, so that we can see it, get a little feedback in the inner HTML. We're going to do plus equals. And let's see, break the printed string plus s, variable s, which is the doohickey. Well, let's see what happens. No, I'm not telling it to do anything. Yeah, I am. Okay. Let me see. Save, refresh. When I hit the count button, it prints the string 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But it does this. Actually, this is not using a loop. This is just printing the string straight out. If you just print S, it prints it straight out. But let's say you want to print it, you want to print one index at a time all the way down. What we'll need to do is a for loop. All right, now I'm going to write this out here. There are several things happening in that one. I don't know why I'm getting oh, I probably spelled that wrong. No, let me in GTH. Like, oh, so I did a no. Oh, comma, semicolon. Make sure you semicolons, commas. I could spend hours trying to find that stupid comma if it weren't for the red. And that's annoying. Element, get element by ID. 4 inner we're going to print a break just to break it up, and then plus s I. So again, those of you in my Python class may have a better understanding of what exactly is going on here, but I never. Here, let me do this so you guys can see what exactly is going on. I apologize for not having that bigger earlier. So down here we've got the variable s. It's got 10 things in it, and this is how we just print that string straight out, and it gives us the printed string straight out. Here we are saying for, and then there's 3 things that are happening inside these brackets, 3 conditions here. We're declaring a new variable I, and I is just a number. So we declare that variable, and then we say as long as I is less than the length of this array, what it's going to do, the computer's going to say, okay, there's 10 indexes here, or 9, 0 through 9. Remember that the computer always counts from 0. So where we say 1, it's actually the 0th index, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But as long as it's still 10 items, it's just 0 to 9. So as long as I is less than 10, that's what this length is. We're going to increment I every time we go through this loop. And every time we go through the loop, all we're going to do is print the variable at the index. So the first index is going to be 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to go through the loop 10 times. Let's see what that looks like. Save, refresh. And there you can see it prints the break character, so it's going to a new line, and the index of s, the variable s, the array. So the first time it goes through, it prints the 0 index. Second time it goes through, it prints the 1 index, and so forth until it gets to the line, until it gets to the end. And the end is when I is equal to the length. So when I becomes 10, because we increment it every time it goes through, it stops. Now, if we didn't do this and we didn't increment it, I'm not even sure it'll work like this. Let's see, file, save, refresh, hit it. No, it won't even work. But this would end up in a an infinite loop where the program would never stop because I would never be incremented and that statement would never be true. I would never be, I would always be less than the length of S. Now you can just put a number in here and say you want to do 5. As long as I is less than 5, it's going to print it out. And if we file, save this, refresh. Oh, it isn't an infinite loop. You see this error message I got at the top here. It isn't an infinite loop and it needs to be stopped. So it just started using up a ton of resources. It just, there's nothing showing that that was happening. So I refreshed it and it bleeped for a second. But all right, so now, come on now. Did I save it? Save, refresh. It still doesn't like it. Okay, so I put the number 5 in there and it went through that loop 5 times instead of 10. So you can do that. The problem with hard coding variables in there, like this number, is like you really should do everything for user input. So if I keep this s.length, then I can come in here and I can change this variable as many times as I want. And it will still work. The code will still work for whatever. Or you can't see it behind my head, but it went all the way to 13. So anyway, that's for loops, if statements, if else's. If you have any question, let me know. We'll move on to the programming exercise. For your programming exercise this week, we're going to expand on what we did last week. The programming exercise in your book, we're not doing all this. We are going to take the fluid converter that we made last week, and we're going to get rid of the slider. We're going to add a few radio buttons, learn how to use those, and we're going to make it go back and forth from gallons to liters based on which button is selected. We also need to have some validation in there. We want to make sure that it doesn't accept values over 1,000 for gallons and 4,000 for liters. 3, yeah, the math is going to work. And we're going to do 5, sort of. We're going to do a randomly generated table, just so you can see how the math random works and how to create a table without coding all the HTML, having a loop do it for you. So what you need to do, or what I did, you can do whatever you want. But what I did is I copied my chapter 3 project. So the code is already written there, and I'm going to rename it to chapter 4. And then I'm going to open Visual Studio and open that folder. Not sure this is correct. File, open folder. Go to my desktop, chapter 4. Open that. Okay, that works. And then what we need to do is rename all of our, well, three files, the info, the interface, and this chapter 3 JavaScript. So just rename those. Chapter 4. Rename chapter 4. And the JavaScript rename chapter 4. And let me do a close-up window so you can see. And then open up, like this one's the, so I got my JavaScript open, and you can see there's still 2 references to the chapter 3 files. We need to make sure we change those to chapter 4 because we just renamed the files. And then we need to open the info and the interface and change the JavaScript reference to chapter 4 in the interface and chapter 4 in the info. And that should be it. Now they should all be linked together and working. We're going to save all of those. And I'm going to open that so that we can kind of look at it as we go. If I can find the folder. Chapter 4. Project. There we go. So put this over here. And on. Okay. It looks like you guys can see everything. Mostly. I know that this is cut off some, but this is the info file, and after you've changed that reference, you can close that because the info page is staying the same. We're not changing that. The interface, however, we are going to change, and we need to everything in the content we can get rid of here within the content. You want to keep the content div and just empty it out. And if we look at the interface, we save all, refresh. Now we just have a blank interface. All right, so what we're going to do is add some radio buttons. And to do that, we're going to do a field set. So in the content, we are going to make a field set. And it's going to have a data role equals choose. This lets us put radio buttons in there. I'm going to give it a legend. And it's just going to say convert from. And then we'll have two buttons that say gallons and liters. So each one has to have a label. The label is the actual text that you see on the button. If you don't put a label in there, you won't see the buttons. This one's going to be for gallons. It's just going to say gallons. And then the input type is radio. And we're going to give it name of units and ID of gallons and a value of gallons. And then we'll do another one for liters. So it has to have a label. Oop, we've got to close it out. Label for liters. And we're just going to have it say liters. And then our input type is radio. Same unit name, or the same name of units. Going to have an ID of liters and a value of liters. LTRS. And that, close it out, is our field set. So if we save and refresh this page, you can see now we have two buttons, and it works like a radio button. You can only have one selected at a time. All right, so what else do we need? We need a place to put the stuff. We need an input, and we need a button. Let's do our input. It's going to have a label as well. And we'll call this one quantity. Input type is number, just like I did on my other example. It's going to have a name of quantity and an ID of quantity. So the labels, yeah, they have an ID and a value, but this input type doesn't need a value. It needs an ID so that we can reference it and pull that variable out. We also need a button. We'll break in here, make a button. On click. Oh, spell that wrong every time. My fingers get moving too fast. we'll just have it run the display function. And it's going to say display on the button. Add another little break. And we'll put a table in here to hold our data. Kind of neatly, I guess. We're going to give this an ID of data so that we can reference it if we need to. Table row, table data. And the first table data is just going to have text in it. Quantity entered. And the next, so it's going to say like quantity entered, and then we're going to have to alter this. Right now it's going to say 0, but when we change it, when we do math, it will change. So let's give it an ID of quantity display. Right now it's going to say 0. Row, table, and content. Okay, that looks good. File, save, or refresh. Okay. So now we have our radio buttons that do the clicky click. We can enter a quantity of liquid either using these little buttons on the side. This is the numbers thing, and this is what jQuery does for us. Awesome. Or you can just enter whatever with the keyboard. We have a button that will fire off our function. It doesn't do anything yet because we haven't written it. And then we will, the output will go right here where this 0 is. So let's jump over to the JavaScript, and we need to write our display function. This is probably given an error because it wasn't, variables aren't there, but so we can get rid of everything that was in the display function, and we're going to write a new one to do stuff. So the first thing we need to do is get the variable that was input by the user from right here, right? We're going to give that name, quantity, and it's going to be equal to document, get element by ID, quantity, and that should be in quotations. So it's going to look over to the HTML file, find the element with the quantity name, and we're going to get that value. I don't know why it keeps giving me that option. I just want to put a semicolon there. All right. And then we need another variable. I'm going to call it gallons. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to check and see if the gallons button is checked. We only have a binary choice. It's either gallons or liters. There's no other option. So if gallons is checked, we're going to convert from gallons to liters. If gallons is not checked, we're going to convert from liters to gallons. Does that make sense? I hope so. So we need to check the document with the element get element ID of gallons. And we're just going to see what that is. It will either be true or false based on whether it is checked or not. So if gal is checked, we're going to do something. We're going to set an alert. Oh, first thing we need to do, before we have to check and see if, that's why we're setting an alert. We have to do another if. So we have to do two things. We have to, one, make sure that it is less than 1,000 gallons, because that was some of our validation. And then if it is, then we can do our stuff. So we need another if statement in here. Quantity is greater than 1,000. So if it's more than 1,000, we need to make sure that they do something and change that. Must be less than 1,000. But if it's less, again, another binary choice. It either is greater than or it isn't greater than. It can't be anything else. We're going to do else. And then the conversion. we're going to get the element ID quantity display, and we're going to change that inner HTML to equals. So we're not using plus equals here. We're just using equals because we want to overwrite that 0 with the difference, right? Quantity plus gallons. Equals. And I'm just going to another line so you can continue to see it. Plus 3.79. We're going to keep that to 2 decimal places. So this is a long line, does a few things. Normally I would just write this all out straight on one line, but I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing here. So we're going to change the HTML of the quantity display, which is this 0 right here, and it's going to say gallons equals the so it's going to say quantity, whatever the quantity is up here, 5555 gallons equals whatever this conversion is, liters. So it's going to read like 5 gallons equals 10 liters, or whatever it actually does. That's what this does. So let's test it. I feel like it's incomplete, but let's see what happens. So I refreshed, saved, refreshed. I'm going to make sure gallons is checked. Let's see if we get an alert if we leave this in here, because it's well over 1,000 at display. We get that alert. Quantity must be less than 1,000. All right, great. 900. 900 gallons is equal to, 900 gallons is equal to 237.53 liters. Perfect. Works perfectly. So now we need to make sure that we can do liters as well. So in our if statement here, we have if gallons is checked, we know we're doing gallons. And so you have an if and an if else. So after this if, we can put an else in here. Because again, it's a binary choice. Either gallons is checked or it's not. And this is what we're doing if gallons is not checked. That means that liters is checked. So we have to do another if statement and check and see if the quantity is greater than 4,000 liters, right? If it is, we're going to do another alert. I'm just going to copy and paste. Quantity must be less than 4,000 liters. And then we're going to do the else. So first it's going to check. The first thing it's going to do is check if gallons is checked. If it is checked, it's going to come down here and check and see if the quantity is less or greater than 1,000. If it's not greater than 1,000, then we're going to actually execute what we need to do. It's like a little tree, and you can kind of show it out how the tree is going to actually get to the result. So if gallons is not checked, it's going to jump all the way down here to the else, and it's going to check and see if the quantity is greater than 4,000. If it is, it's going to fire this off. If it's not, it's going to go ahead and jump down here to the else and do the calculation. And yeah, I'm just going to copy this because it's pretty similar. I just have to change a few things. We're still going to check the quality, or we still want to change the same variable. We still want it to say the same thing. But this actually is going to be liters. We're changing that from liters. We're going to change this to gallons. And we're going to change the divide to a multiply. So that should do it. Now we're going to get the quantity, and we're going to say that many liters equals this many gallons. That looks like it should work. Save all, refresh. Liters is selected. Let's try 5,000. Nope, quantity must be less than 4,000 liters. So let's go down to 3,000, hit display, and 3,000 liters equals that many gallons. Perfect. And that is that. The next thing we want to do is dynamically create a table. When doing the table, I think it's probably best just to create a new tab, new page, and do it on a new page. So what I'm going to do is open this back up, and I'm going to go in here to new file. Looks like it's JS, but we're going to do chapter 4. We'll call it arrays.html. And I'm going to make sure I move it to outside. Are you sure you want to move it? Yes, move. So it's not in the JS folder. It's out here. And a lot of this is going to be copy and pasting. It's all going to look the same. So I'm opening up the info page. Control A, Control C, go back to the arrays page, Control V. There, I got it. Just about everything done. The only thing, I think, the nav bar, we're going to add a space in here. We're going to have to change this on all of them. So we're going to change the nav bar, and what we're going to do, let's see, on the info, copy this, and then go to the info page. And I'm going to add a third button, and that is going to be arrays. We're going to create a new function and a new page. And let's just, I'm going to save the info page here real quick. Save all, refresh, go to the info page, and now you can see up the top I have 3 buttons. So it looks right on the info page, and that's all we need to do on the info page. Go to the interface page. Here, just copy that third button, a third list item from the info page. Go to your other doohickey, and paste it in there in the interface. Save that. Save all. Refresh. Now when you go to interface, you should have 3 buttons as well. And now you go to your arrays page. You can also paste that in, but what you want to do on your arrays page, make sure you take this class UI button persist thingy, copy that, and then get it off the info and put it on the arrays. That way the button is tells you what page you're on by being blue. So like on the info page it's blue, interface page is blue, and on the arrays page it's blue. And oh, we don't have a function yet for the arrays. So go to your JavaScript, and you can just copy the first function there. Give yourself a little space. We're going to make this called arrays, and it should go to the chapter 4 arrays.html. And save that. Refresh. Info page. Oh, that's why. That freaked me out a little bit. So we still have all that same data on the arrays page. Go to your arrays HTML, and let's get rid of everything in the content. Save that. Refresh. Now your arrays is empty. Your interface is still there. Your info is still there, and all the links work. Now you have a blank arrays page. All right, so what we want to do is create a table dynamically. So in order to do anything, we got to put a button on here at least, right? So in the content, we'll just put a button. And it will call the create table function. And it's going to say create table on it. So file, save, refresh. Now we have a button, create table. Doesn't do anything yet because we have to write that JavaScript. This may or may not be a little funky. Let's see. I want to make sure y'all can see it here. So we're going to create a new function called create table. Function create table. We're going to have a variable, my table, and it's going to be equal to document create element, create element, .ns, document.create element. Is this spelled right? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to create a table, T-A-B-L-E, all in capital. Not sure if that's necessary, but. And then we're creating this variable that is going to create a table. And then we need to tell it where to put it. Get element by ID. What did I call it? It's just in content, okay? So just in the content, we are going to append child to that content. We're going to append a table to, it's going to be a child element of the content div. We're going to call it my table. So it's going to create a table called my table. And then I'm just going to create a few variables in here just to fill the table up with. So the first variable I'm just going to call A, and it's going to be an array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just an array of numbers. And then another variable. And I'm going to give this, like, you can do whatever you want. I don't care. But you need 10 elements. So I'm using cars like Ford, Chevy, I'm going to run out of car things that I know, I think. Yeah, there are a lot of car manufacturers, but I don't know what of them. How many have I got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep. All right, so I've got two variables, two array variables, one with numbers, one with text. And then we're just going to create a variable C that is equal to an array. But the array is blank. And what we want to do is fill that array with 10 elements that are randomly generated. And just like in my last example where I showed you how you use a for loop to count through stuff, we're going to do the same thing. So for I haven't used I. Okay, so var I is going to be equal to 0. And then as long as I is less than 10, we're going to increment I. So if you remember my last explanation, we're declaring the variable I, giving it a value of 0, and then putting a semicolon. Then we're saying as long as I is less than 10, we're going to add 1 to I. We're going to go through the loop and then add 1 to I. And in that loop, we have to do some current rows, blah, 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 inserts, and this is how you do it. The current row is going to be equal to my table, insert row, insert row. minus 1. The var first cell is going to be equal to the current row, insert cell, 0. Oops. And then the first cell of the inner HTML is equal to A, I. So we're given a row number and we're giving it a cell number, and then we're saying the first cell will be equal to A and the index. So the first time it'll be 0, second time it'll be 2, and it's going to get this A and put it into the first cell in a loop. And then we need like a second cell and a third cell for the others. Forget your semicolons because JavaScript wants a semicolon. Get used to Python. Those in my Python class, you know, you don't have to do all that. I said keep it. All right. I don't know why this keeps doing that. C, E. Oh, because that's what I did here. Make sure your spelling is correct and all that stuff just won't work. Okay, so what? Oh, you can't even see what I'm doing. Man, I hate when I do that. All right, so you're creating a variable, my table insert row -1, and then we're going to create a first cell in the 0. So you're creating the columns and the rows here. And just remember how they count: 0, 1, 2. And then in those cells, 0, 1, 2, you're going to put the index from I, the index from B, and the index from C. And in this way, it's going to create a table. Let's see what this does. We didn't do the math. Save all. Refresh and create table. Okay, so right now it's all showing as undefined, or the third row is. We can see that the first column is all variable A, and the second column is all variable B, and obviously the third column will be all variable C when we add the math random. So we're going to start populating. Before this loop, we need to make another for loop to populate the C array. So let's just use another counter variable. It's going to be the same thing as the other one. Instead of I, we're going to use J. So before we do that, before we create our table, we're going to populate the C array. So for each index in C, we're going to do math random. And that's it. Math random. It's going to create a number, and generally the numbers, I think, are between 0 and 1 or something. I don't know, stupid numbers. I don't know why. You can make it do between 1 and 10. Maybe we'll do that. Let's see how this works, though. Doesn't really matter to me. I just want you to see that, one, you can create an empty array. You can then populate it with random information using the math random, and then create a table dynamically to fill in your HTML. So you don't have to code a whole table with table rows and table data, and then give each table data an ID to, you know, put this stuff into. This is how it does it dynamically, and it's much easier as long as you understand this. So I saved it. Let's refresh, create table, and there we go. It's all, yeah. So all the numbers are going to be between 0 and 1. If you really want to do a number between 1 and 10, I think the book will go over, hold on, what does it say? In your, yeah, so it's going to cover floor and ceiling, right? I don't like the way that JavaScript does it, but if you're going to use JavaScript, obviously you got to do the way the JavaScript does it. So, messing up my screen. All right, so if you want to create a random number between 1 and 10, 1 and 10, for instance, you have to do some extra stuff. You have to do Math.floor, and then math random times 10, or I'm not sure if that's right. I don't do this with JavaScript all that often, but here, let's see what happens. We save this, refresh, create a table. That's 1 through 9, create another table, 0 through, it's going to keep on going. Every time you click the button, it'll create a new table. And this looks like it's doing 1 through 9. I haven't seen a 10 yet. 0, I have seen some zeros. So 0 through 9. If you want to do 0 through 10, you have to include 10. So Math.floor to math random times 11 will give you 0 to 10 or 1 to 10. 0. Did I save that? I didn't save it. Save, refresh, create table. Okay, 0 and a 10. So you'll go from 0 to 10. And that's just prettier, I guess. You don't have all the periods or whatever. Now, we didn't do any CSS in this lesson. I would encourage you to create a Chapter 4 CSS and do something with your, make it look pretty. This is not a CSS class. Let me see what I got just laying around I can throw in there. Pause. I just grabbed a CSS file from a previous project, and if we go in here to link it, just copy and paste. I'm always trying to type everything. It takes forever. Copy and paste whenever you can. We're going to call it Ch4.css. Awesome. And you make sure, if you do this, again, this is optional, but if you don't have CSS experience, I strongly suggest you do something with it. So I'm putting the link in each one of the HTML pages I have. Save, refresh. Doesn't look any different, does it? I know what I have to do. Give my page an ID of wrapper. Again, on each one of these, because I always style my wrappers. Save, refresh. Well, some of them worked and some of them didn't. I don't, doesn't matter to me here. This is what I'm looking at now on my arrays page. Create a table. So your table has got some funky styling to it. My background has got some funky styling to it. I don't know why it's not working. My table now on the arrays, the interface page is different. Information is still lazy and the same, but I did something. I would encourage you to play with your CSS. Make a CSS file, link it, and style it. Make it colorful. Do something. Points for style. Points for style. Anyway, if you have any questions, send me an email. Let me know. Thanks.